Welcome to the bold analysis. Why do you think William Ruto decided to handpick, and I've used the word handpick intentionally, the next DPP from the same Office of Director of Prosecution's office after taking the good Kenyans in a long process of interviews and all that? Why am I saying? State House today has released a report about the new DPP that takes over from Yusuf Haji. And they have nominated Renson Mulele Ingonga as the next Director of Public Prosecutions. According to reports, of course, 30 candidates were shortlisted and went through the process in more than 1 week in Nairobi, including Danstan Omari, with the reports ripe that Danstan Omari was at the brink of becoming the next DPP, but that has been squashed. The report that has also emerged, and looking at the profile of the new DPP, he is currently an assistant director at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, ODPP, and is currently the head of Northeastern Area and Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Unit at the ODPP. Now, what has happened here is very clear. The Yusuf Haji was picked from DPP office and promoted. I don't know whether it's promoted or transferred or moved to be the secretary, the Director General of NIS, National Intelligence Service. Then just from the same office, a director has been picked to take over from former boss. This is not new, even in the corporate world. It happens quite often. Even in government, it happens quite often. But it also raises a lot of questions on what exactly would be the effectiveness if, or did Ruto need a new DPP there, or did he need someone new, a fresh blood there, or he decided, or it was just an opportunity, it was part of the deal to promote Haji and then the other person to be fixed. There seems to be something there that why William Ruto is making that. Now, it cannot go without any say that in that case, there are normally lobby that is done, that people lobby. By the way, and lobbying is not just about making calls. It's not about proximity to the appointing authority or the appointing person, but it's also about the resources that comes into play. I tend not to have a problem with the new, maybe the criteria to handpick internally. However, we seem to see Ruto that is embracing status quo. And that is what I want us to look at, why he did not move out of that box, why he decided to retain the same faces in that office. Even though we know very well that Ruto has tried to project a case of doing everything new. He will always want something to be done differently. That is something that he has, I think, has shown Kenyans, that in every sector, he's always wanted things to be done differently. And that is why we've seen a lot of policy directions being churned out from different ministries in respect to what exactly is happening. So I want us to look at this matter critically so that we can draw some key political observations in terms of why do you think, remember Miguna was part of the team. He was supposed to be there. He was not picked. And of course, him coming out saying that, it was not a must, it was not an expectation. Then another famous person, Danstan Omari, lawyer, who was pro-Azimio for quite a better part of this time, was also dropped. Was also there, but he has also missed out, even though he underwent through the interviews. And then internally, they have picked. There are those critical issues that William Ruto is looking at. Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our video. Thank you very much, and let me say thank you very much for supporting our podcast. There is something I want us to look at here. William Ruto is very cagey about past files and wants to keep those, such critical offices close to his chest. For the better part of second term of Uhuru Kenyatta, there were some very challenging files about, I remember the death of Kenyan, they were there. There are a couple of other corruption cases that were being investigated here and there. And that cuts across both also on the other side of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. One of the things I am seeing here is William Ruto is still looking at the shadow of Yusuf Haji in that office because of maybe the trust level. There will be a bit of trust deficit if any other person could be given that position. But then let me tell you, the interviews is normally a formality. And Kenyan, our governance structure is very corporate and is very concrete in terms of, even if you put someone there, no one fails an interview because hawezi, but it's because someone else has to be picked. I see William Ruto trying to maintain the shadow of Yusuf Haji under that office. And it's one thing that is there, that probably there was a lot of contention, what I'm seeing here. There could have been a lot of contention amongst the political players, even the respect to power sharing deal, on who was to get the office of DPP. Probably in power sharing deal, they must have agreed that we do this, you do this, you do this other one. Then clearly, you will, when you do something, you are going to benefit to some extent. And what he's trying to do is to keep Yusuf Haji around his chest. Number two, William Ruto could also be rewarding people that worked with Uhuru Kenyatta, were under Uhuru Kenyatta, but worked in his favor. Clearly. Okay, that's the only reason. Everyone who has worked with Uhuru Kenyatta and was seen as non-conformity to the William Ruto agenda was actually kicked out. That's the gospel truth. Was actually kicked out. So if someone is remaining, then the only political interpretation, or rather the only political understanding here is that person could have been Uhuru betrayer. And then, because he was working with Uhuru, but he supported him in one way or the other, it could be part of rewarding. That is why, and this is self-explanatory, because anyone who worked with Uhuru Kenyatta who was seen as not to have danced to Uhuru Kenyatta, to William Ruto tune, was actually shown the door. So internally, these are people that are still there and they're still trying to manage what exactly it is. Now, the other third political observation I can also make here is it begs the question of what is William Ruto's plan on corruption? Yeah, it's that question seems to come there because the person who picked as DPP is, of course, we are not doubting his competence, but he's already an insider in an office that was largely blamed for dropping cases, high-profile cases, against some people that were leaning towards Kenya Kwanza. And that dropping of cases was under the guise of politically instigated, but again, they are also dropped because they now sit politically right with the current administration. And if we can make that blunder that we dropped cases on political grounds, and people who were already in an office that was already flawed, an office that was already doubted on its commitment to fight corruption, then it begs the question here, what is William Ruto's plan in anti-corruption? And he seems to have taken a very loose end on fighting corruption, because it is not what people would actually look at. It is not easily what people would actually look at, because people want new blood with fresh energy, someone who will actually disturb the status quo. When you disturb the status quo is when you can then effect changes. But when you pick the same faces internally there is more than what catches the eye. But then, of the 3 points that I've spoken about, there is one thing that I need to say, and it's the primary factor in all this when you talk about state appointments. It's about lobbying. And lobbying does not, I've said it's not about appointing authority, it's about proximity and able to. It could also be a matter of the highest bidder. It could also be a matter of the highest bidder. I wish the new office that we are actually coming up with would give that DPP office breathe some fresh air and do the necessary. In this country, in William Ruto's plan to revive the economy, we seem to have looked at financial access to finances as the only factor. As in economic recovery, the finances is working in a silo. But the truth of the matter here is, even if we fix our finances, that we can be able to fund ourselves from taxpayers' money without borrowing, but much of it also goes into wastage under the guise of corruption. Nowadays, it has been given a very beautiful name, misappropriation. There is nothing like misappropriation. It is just stealing. If we are not going to address it, then William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza are not going to fix it. If there is something that needs Mr. Fix It, is pilferage. It's not corruption. Corruption is even a beautiful name for it. It's stealing. It's pilferage. If we can give it that angle and listen to what exactly we need to do in terms of we actually hold access to financing this side and fix corruption, then we are done. We'll not borrow because we are losing a lot of money on corruption. So ladies and gentlemen, that's my take. Thank you, and let's meet in the next podcast.